welcome to the Harvard Business School Online Global Chapter. My name is Gwen Mdinaradze. Many of you already know that I lead the HBS Online Global Chapter. Besides Harvard, I'm the president and CEO of Speakers Alliance Canada, an international speaking and consulting firm based in Toronto, and the founder of an invitation-only networking platform, JANO, Joint Alliance of Networking and Outsourcing. At HBS Online, I have completed the Management Essentials Certificate and now pursuing core credentials and sustainable strategy. And my plan is to take another strategy course. And as many of you know, we can get opportunity to be specialized in strategy. So if you have taken such a path, would love to hear your advice on which course to take next. Feel free to type in the chat. Feel free to let us know where are you joining us from and which course have you taken at Harvard. So that would help us to make the event more engaging and interactive. I have been consulting startup firms through the PDC formula I invented, which stands for Plan, Disrupt, Communicate. I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time and joining us today. I mentioned earlier that we just moved to a new platform at HBS Online, and we're working to have more features to remind our RSVP guests to join the event. So if you did not get my email, we are working on this. Today, we gathered here to welcome Suzannah Baum, celebrate her newly launched best-selling book, and learn more about confidence in public speaking and how to be a better presenter. Suzannah is working on trademarking her very successful diamond formula, and I want to hear more about the formula and the steps Suzannah follows when she works with her clients. And I want to hear more about the formula because I know that helped so many people to overcome their public speaking fears. Today, we speak about Captivate with Confidence, how to build persuasive, powerful, and professional presentations every time you speak. And I'm so excited to hear more. Let me tell you more about Suzannah's very impressive background and extensive experience in executive coaching and public speaking. And after that, I will ask some very interesting questions to Suzannah. Feel free to keep your videos on and type some answers in the chat. And also, please note that taking pictures and videos without permission is prohibited. We will take a group photo at the end of the session. I will record the video and we'll publish it later on Speakers Alliance Canada's YouTube channel. And I will also take some pictures during the session to promote it on the social media channels. If you don't want your picture to be taken, please feel free to turn your video off. Now about Suzannah and her impressive background. Suzannah worked with business professionals who want to position themselves as leaders by delivering more engaging, compelling presentations. Through her training programs, workshops, executive speech coaching, online learning, and keynotes, Suzannah teaches both new and experienced speakers a unique process to create and deliver powerful presentations, allowing them to stand up in front of audiences with confidence and clarity, build their visibility and reputation, and get the results they want. With more than 14 years in the speaking industry, Suzannah has helped thousands of speakers gain more confidence, build more powerful presentations, and unleash their ultimate speaking potential. And Suzannah, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Gwen. Very excited to be back with the Harvard Business School online community.
Suzannah, tell us about, I've shared a little bit about your background, but I want to know more about how you got into this field. To tell us more about your experience and background.
Absolutely. So the experience really stems from, being in the professional speaking industry now, and the public speaking industry stemmed from hating everything about public speaking, avoiding it, wherever I could in every situation. So I grew up very shy, just very happy to be kind of off in the corner. Don't look at me. Don't be, I didn't want to be the center of attention, which is fine when you're a kid and I guess when you're in high school. But then as you get a little bit older into university and into the first jobs, it becomes a challenge. And that's where you start to gain that self-awareness of it's not the right thing to do is not to do what's easy, right? Which is to continue hiding and to continue being smaller. The right thing to do is try to figure out how to get over this. Now, I say this as if I'm some sort of superhero, like, oh, I just went ahead and did it, but I didn't. It was a very difficult journey for me, but I would say that the one thing that really made a difference, I had at the time I was working, I guess we're going back about 25 years or so, trying not to age myself too much. Actually, let's say 20 years. Let's say 20 years we're going back. And I was working in marketing because I have a Bachelor of Commerce in Marketing. And I was working at a company, at an IT company, and my boss was amazing, kind of a mentor to me. And every week we would have a weekly meeting. And at these meetings, he would ask me to speak up. He would say, okay, now I'd like you to talk about what's going on in marketing. And I would say, no, right? Or I would come up with every excuse that I could. No, I can't today. My throat is sore. Oh, I wasn't working on that project. Oh, I think you would be a better person to talk about it. Everything I could to avoid it until my first performance evaluation with him, where he sat me down and he said, listen, I know you want to go farther in this company. I know you want to go farther in your career, but you can't until you start speaking up. And that was kind of the first bell that rang in me, because I knew he was right, but I wasn't yet even ready to put myself in that place of discomfort, to put myself, where I could do that. I continued to say no at work. However, 6 months later, as I was continuing to be frustrated, I was getting more and more frustrated at work because I was continuing to hold myself back by not speaking. And there was one day that I specifically was sitting in a meeting and the CEO was speaking, and I had this idea pop into my head, or question pop into my head, but I didn't want to say anything because I was like, well, probably stupid. Like, I think that's a stupid question. I don't want anybody to think that I'm stupid, so I'm going to just stay silent. And then someone else from the back of the room kind of pipes up and asks the exact same question that I was going to ask. And the CEO was just delighted with them. The CEO was like, I'm so glad you asked that. We hadn't thought of it. You know what? Let's talk about it more. And and if any of you have ever had that experience where you're holding yourself back from asking a question and then someone else says the exact thing that you're asking and they get the credit, has that happened to you? Like,
Yes, it had happened
that
many
and that was
times.
a bit of and that was my red flag at that point, to just sort of start trying to figure out how to get over it. And and Julian is saying yes, like, this is so common and at the time so upsetting, but it's always those upsetting things and those frustrating things that give us that little kick to do something differently, because it's so easy to just continue doing what you're doing when it's easy. But it gave me a little bit of a kick. And I joined Toastmasters and I was there for a few years, and it was really when I took my first steps to speaking outside of the Toastmasters, sponsored by Toastmasters, but speaking outside to real groups, that I really something just changed within me. The idea that someone who grew up so shy and quiet would have people listening, quiet and listening and taking notes on what I was saying, was just such a monumental thing that it sparked within me just a desire to move into a different direction in my career. At that point, I still had no idea how to get there or where to go. I mean, that, again, we're talking 14, 15 years of a process, but thank goodness, and more thank goodness, because I've had the opportunity to meet so many people who struggle with this and who have such a deep expertise and so much knowledge, and they kind of hold it back because, of course, because we don't want to be judged, we don't want to look silly, we don't want to make the wrong move. But it's such a pleasure to watch people go from holding themselves back to feeling more comfortable releasing and sharing their insights, their expertise, their knowledge, their education, because it doesn't just help them. I mean, it helps everyone, right? It helps all of us. If we can share, we help ourselves and we help others who are the recipients of our knowledge.
That was a great story, and I can relate myself to these, situations like that.
Back in 2014, I launched an online course because it was, the mid 2010s, everybody had these courses everywhere, and I launched this course. And the way I did the course, you have 6 modules, 1 hour on a teleseminar or a webinar, but I liked to script everything. So I literally script 6 hour long modules as part of this course, which was all about the diamond. So I know we're going to be talking about the diamond
Right.
structure, but it was really all about how do you build structure into the speeches? How do you create the course was called How to Create a Signature Speech That Sells. But as I got more into it, I realized it's not just people who want to give speeches. It's those who need to present at work, right? You present at work, present to your colleagues, present to the board, present to your clients, whatever. So it was all about how to structure the presentation, what goes in, what stays out, what stories, how do you, focus on the pain points so that you could connect with the audience early and really sort of take them through that journey. So I had created that course, and then someone who had attended the course said, if you just take all that content, there's your book. And I went, oh, fantastic idea. That sounds so easy. So I, created 20 chapters and I tried to split up all of the content, and I worked really hard to do that, but it just wasn't working. You know how sometimes you're really trying to work on something that should work, but it's not coming together. And when you're in the zone, everything just flows, right? But it wasn't flowing, but I knew at the top of my head that I had all this content and it should be a book. But it took me about a year that I was playing around with it, and then I struggled a lot. It just wasn't fitting this outline, and I put it away. And then a couple of years later, I thought to myself, well, maybe it's time to start over again, because back then in I think it was about 2018, I was asked to go speak at one of the chapters of my speakers association, which is CAPS, the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers, in Calgary. I get there, the person who asked me to come said, you have a book? And I said, no, I don't have a book. He said, okay, no problem, don't worry about it. I went to Calgary, and all the speakers who had books, they got to put them at a table at the back of the room, and there was this giant table with tons of books. And I thought, okay, there's really no excuse for me not to have a book anymore. So in 2019, early 2019, I picked it up again, and I would go to Starbucks and I would, write little pieces. I created a new outline, which fit a little bit better. And I would go, so about 2 months straight, every Tuesday morning, I'd get my cappuccino, sit down in my favorite spot, and write for 2 hours. And, a little progress, right? I mean, again, a giant book doesn't get written in 2 hour segments at Starbucks, right? But it was every little bit helps. But then, I missed a Tuesday, and then I went on vacation, and then my son's, summer break came up, and everything just kept throwing a wrench into the plans, and I stopped. And so that stopped for about a year, and then in January the following, I picked it up again, and it was just this constant start, stop, very frustrating. But then I would start again, and then I would get all empowered, and then I would lose my patience or lose my flow, and then I would get frustrated and push it aside. So there was a lot of that going on, and I share this not just because I want to just talk about me and every single stage of the process, but because I think we all go through whatever big projects or small projects. Sometimes we lose the flow, we lose the motivation, and then we never pick it up, or we pick it up again and then we lose the motivation. And like it can be frustrating. And sometimes, when I picked it up, I think it was the fourth time, and the fourth and the last time over COVID, it's because a colleague of mine wrote to me and said, I'm going to be speaking to a group, and I need a little something on storytelling, like a little mini ebook. Can you create something? So I said, sure, put something together. I sent it to her, and then I looked at it and I went, wait, this is my storytelling chapter. Like I I didn't even realize I was doing it, and here it is. So that was exactly what compelled me to restart, because I realized, well, now I restarted the book without even realizing it. And then through that summer, I worked at it, and even if it meant all I could do was 20 minutes of writing, that's all I did. For me, it almost seemed like the less time I had, the more I would write, because I would push myself a little bit faster. All that to say, 2 years ago, 2020, September 2020 was the first time I had the manuscript. And then it took another 2 years, because you guys, I'm very much a procrastinator. And life happens and things get busy, um, and it was, over a year for the editing process, because I kept rewriting and rechanging until editors and everyone had to sort of put their foot down and say, stop doing what you're doing. And still supporters at every stage saying, just, it doesn't even matter anymore, just get the book out. It doesn't matter what the title is, just get the book out. Like, I spent 6 months almost asking, what should the title be? Here's like 10 options. I would put it on LinkedIn, and I would ask my friends, and I would ask colleagues, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And some people are like, doesn't matter, just go, just pick a name and go, because it doesn't matter. You just need to get the book out. And so, and that was it. There was a lot of moments where uh, what's the question? I had to get out of my own way, because I was the one constantly to wait. I need a title. Wait, I need to look at 12 designs for the book. Wait, hold on. What does everyone think about this? And then I would wait for responses, and until people said, don't, just stop and do what you know is right. And if it's not right, you can fix it later. Just go. And a lot of this was a learning to me of how much faster, not how much faster, but just getting out of your own way. And since then, I try to be more mindful. Since the book sort of opened this up to a tendency to do that, I try to be more mindful of, where do I block myself from progress or moving forward on something, because I'm just taking too long for no reason. And so,
Well,
um,
why no reason? You were extremely busy.
okay, yes, I was extremely
Yeah.
busy. Yes, still working, still family, still
Yeah.
everything.
And I'm so excited that Harvard community has this opportunity to hear from you. And actually, Sebastian said that he's reading your book right now. I'm so
Yes,
excited. I
thank
want
you.
to,
Yes, indeed. It's
Yes,
yeah.
really good.
we were
Very
texting
interesting
on
story.
LinkedIn too. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to me that many people shy away from public speaking, and they don't like it, or they don't want to do it. And I think those people may be the best audience for your book, but they don't even want to put themselves into those situations. How do you address this issue with people who may be in that situation?
Most notably, the type of person who does speak for work a lot, let's say a sales, well, not even in sales, just in sales, like it's someone who gives regular presentations. They're in training, they're in sales, they're a VP, they have to speak to their team, so they speak uh, quite a bit, but they know that they can be better, right? They just know that they could be better, um, and they want to be better, but they're not quite sure, right? They know they're maybe leaving money on the table, maybe they're not connecting. So sort of in the sense of that mid level, not necessarily nervous, but not necessarily getting the results that they want. And at the same time, there's the higher level speakers, the ones who are speaking to large audiences, whether it's the CEOs or high level professionals or other authors, or they are getting out there and they're speaking to larger groups. And they know that people look up to them. They know that they inspire other people, and yet they feel they can also be better, but they don't know how to get there. They don't know what's missing to connect with the audience, and what's missing to help them just reach that greater height, I guess you could say. So with that in mind, those are some of the key people I had in mind when I was writing this, because I've worked with high level VPs and CEOs who, get me in a room and they're like, don't tell anyone, but I'm freaking out about this presentation I have to give. And there was one woman in particular, and she actually made it into one of the case studies in my book, that she knew that people looked up to her. She's like, I have this huge responsibility because I have these sort of junior people in this company. They're looking up to me as the high level female professional, which was a little less the female VP, which in that company she was still sort of a little bit more of an anomaly in that sense, but I think that has changed since. But she knew that a lot of people were looking up to her, so there was that added pressure as well. So those are the three types. Now, the question you had asked is how do I address the people who need this the most? Kind of the people who are feeling the least confident. Was that what you had asked, Ben?
Yeah, I guess. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Needs more confidence, I guess.
yeah, they need more confidence. Only people who are ready for this message, and who are ready and who have that little inkling and that feeling like, okay, you have to step up a little more. You can do this. And it's okay that you don't know how yet, but you can do this, you should do this. Like the self-talk that we have that often stems from that frustration from missing out on an opportunity or not speaking up and someone else having the same idea and getting all the credit for it. Like these little frustrations. And sometimes it's I remember some of the clients who would call me and say, I have so much anxiety and issues with confidence, but I don't want to even do this, but I feel like I need to get over it. And that's enough, right? Just the feel, because if you just feel like, no, it's not for me, I'm going to go sit there in the corner. Okay, you're not there yet. You're just not there yet. So it's really, I think a big piece of this is reminding people that, that everybody has their own unique skill and talent and expertise and their own story, their own message, and why it's so important for them to share it, right? It's about why. Like, why are you even calling? First of all, I'll often ask, like, why are you calling? What's happening in your life right now that makes you feel you need a coach or the support of someone or more confidence or something? And it's because they have this feeling, I want to do more, but this is a real struggle because my brain is telling me, go out and do this, but my heart is like, no, they're gonna judge you, you're gonna look terrible, everyone will hate you, like, right? So it's reminding people that it's not necessarily about, their feelings and their nervousness, their confidence, because that often, like, the true success of a great presentation is how does the person, or how do the people opposite you react to your message, right? Do they see the relevance? Is it relevant to them? Is it meaningful? Is it valuable and beneficial to them? And ultimately, that, for me, that's the success, is how does the audience receive your presentation? And do they care if you're confident, you're not confident, you're nervous? Usually they don't even care, right? They don't care how you feel. They care about what you can do for them. How can you add value to their lives? So for me, the first step is often like, let's put aside, let's acknowledge the fear. Okay, you're nervous, you're not feeling calm. Okay, acknowledged, real. Let's just park that, put it to the side right now, and let's talk about your audience. Let's talk about your message and what is it you want to get through to them. And when we can sort of shift the focus and shift the mindset a little bit, that, okay, we just don't have space right now to address your confidence or lack thereof. Let's just focus on what's really important to create a successful presentation. Then we'll come back to it. I mean, when I'm coaching someone, we will come back to I don't ignore it, but we focus on creating a strong, structured message that is relevant to the audience. And then we move to, okay, well, now let's rehearse. Now let's see what you look like. Let's see how you feel when you are delivering a message that is much stronger, that is much more structured. It's often, that's the shift, right? Is we struggle with public speaking and presentations because we put together a bunch of information and then we drop it on the audience and we say, here you go, and now I'm done. And that's it. But if we can look at it more from, what does the audience need to hear and how can I deliver that message? Then the confidence shifts a little because you're delivering a message that is now more relevant and more targeted to the audience. So we can approach it almost from a place of less about me and how I feel and more about how are they going to feel once they hear me speak. And so it's a little bit of a mindset shift that's important, but it's really, I mean, it's critical in order to be able to sort of put your nerves aside and focus on the value that you can provide and the value you can provide to them.
Mhm. And as a keynote speaker, what's your process to get ready for a keynote speech? Do you follow the same process that you teach your clients, or there's something hidden secret?
No, oh, hidden secret, the secret sauce. No, actually, you know what? After I had created this diamond structure, which I was teaching to other people, I think this was in 2014 that I created that, and then in 2015 I got an opportunity to give a fairly large keynote, one of the largest at that time. It was the biggest that I had done. I think it was going to be 120 people in the room, plus there was going to be an Olympic athlete and a CEO, whatever. It was a big deal. And so again, I went to Starbucks and I'm like, okay, let me start thinking about what the speech is going to be about. And I worked and I struggled and I'm like, it's not fitting. Nothing's working. I can't, I want to tell this story, but it's, I was really just trying to cram different pieces of a speech into one. And then, well, I was part of a mastermind at that time and I was saying, I'm really having a hard time coming up with something. And I remember this friend looked at me and she said, but why don't you just use your diamond? And I was like, oh, right. Like I was so busy teaching other people how to use it that I had not applied it to myself. So I,
Oh.
went back to Starbucks and I had, with the diamond. And if I could tell you within 10 minutes, the whole, not, I mean, it wasn't scripted, but the whole outline just came together when I put it together. It was, how am I introducing this? What is the main problem that they are facing? What are the three things I want to talk about? What stories are relevant to put in there? Because again, the stories, you come into a keynote, there's always people want to hear stories. You keep hearing more stories, make it relevant, make it connect. But so I had this library of stories, and then I had to figure out, well, which stories go in and which go out. And I had one friend who gave me this great piece of advice. She said, take all the stories out and then you have to audition them back in. And so it may be that there's this amazing story you want to tell, but it doesn't fit with this content. Then you have to put it aside and just lose the attachment to the stories and just put in the ones that really are relevant for your message and for the audience. So it was a whole process of, and again, the diamond with establishing what elements need to be in each presentation. So, oh, there it is. Thanks, Gwen. Which elements need to be in and how do I apply them? And again, like I said, within 10 minutes, I had the outline that just, the funny thing is all the information is in there, right? It's all in your brain. It's all in there. It's just, how can you get it out in the easiest way possible? Because the initial oh, thanks very much, Sophie. Great advice, thank you. Because I had so many ideas of what needed or should have gone into that keynote, and they were all fighting with each other and I couldn't get it out. But when there's a flow and a structure and a guideline, for me this diamond was the framework of, okay, what do I need to look at first? What's the problem they're facing? Okay, this is the problem. Great. So with that being the problem, what three things do I need to address to help them move past the problem? Okay, these could be the first three. High level, a lot of editing goes in, but then within each element, within each point, what can I talk about? What stories can fit? What jokes might be able to go in there? What pieces of content need to go in there? Like it all just flowed so much easier that in the end I was like, well, first, thank goodness for that friend who suggested that I, use my own tools to create my keynotes. But since then, I can't do anything without it. And even when I work with my clients, I send them, even before we start working together, I send them the diamond, I send them a little audio that I create about it. And I say, you need to know this because we need to start on the same page so that when I ask you questions and we start building your presentations, that I'm following the structure and you understand the structure, which just is meant to make everything about presenting easier. It's a better message for your audience, stronger, more structured, more focus, and engaging to the audience as well.
And what I like the most is it's kind of a workbook. You can write down some of the answers and then you can reread and kind of better understand all those steps. It's here.
Love it.
Me too. So there are questions, for example, who is the main character, then who, problem, solution, execution, and result. So you can actually write down. It's so customized to your speech. It's not just a broad advice, as I understand. It's very customized to your needs. You can write your answer and then reread who is the main character, and then there's your answer. So it's so customized to your needs. I love it.
Yes, thank you.
What things do you do to keep learning and stay at the forefront of public speaking?
Oh my gosh, what a good question. Okay. It's a good question. You know what? Here's and this I almost don't even have, I don't even know if there is a right answer here. I have been following many of the speakers who, we all had to go super virtual over the last two and a half years. It's coming back to in person, but I think there's still an appetite for virtual events and Zoom events like this. What have I been doing? I mean, over the last 2.5 years, there was definitely a very quick learning curve. I have seen some people do amazing things with OBS and Ecamm Live, and they can make things dance and sing and everything. What I have done personally over the time, I mean, I've upgraded equipment, videos, audios, because I realize how important the audio is. Even yesterday, I was on a call with someone else, and their audio was so awful that I mean, it took energy. Like, I got off the phone exhausted because I was like, I can't, what is he saying? I'm not sure I caught half of it. So I understand how important it is to have the good video, the audio, but also to keep the connection elements in there too. So while I have chosen not to go completely all out with a giant video studio with switchers and things at this time, I tend to rely more on the funny audience pieces. So often I actually have here, I'll show you, these people tend to feature into my presentations. I have superheroes that I feature into my presentations, that they come into it. I have, I talk about, always being on time. I have little props and little things around that are used really to create the connection, because I don't want the technology to take over what is supposed to be a learning and a connection piece. So I think there's a fine line, and really, if you can manage the technology really well, and I've seen some people do amazing things with it, then go for it, as long as you make sure to remember that the connection to the audience is the most important thing.
But
Yeah,
it's very
Sebastian, I want to
interesting.
hear more about you because he's reading your book, Suzannah.
Yes.
Yeah, my grandfather wrote one a few years ago. My uncle too. So maybe one day, I don't know. Yeah, maybe I'm next. Yeah. The story, like she was saying, the first day she stepped into a meeting room and she was delivering her speech to CEOs, executives, and she realized, like, the thing, with the pen, when
Yes. The fancy
when
pen.
the fancy pen, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to see yeah, the story, to learn more about how you did it, basically.
Yeah. Well, that was, as Sebastian says. So now also part of my props, I have fancy pens around.
Okay.
Right? I like to surround myself with the fancy pens. But yeah, just a quick, I didn't go into as much detail in that story, but that was the moment that I knew that I wanted to do this for a living. Was Toastmasters had asked a few of its members to go and give a presentation to some university alumni, McGill University alumni, and I volunteered with 3 other people. And that was the moment, that my first professional, I wasn't paid for it or anything, but my first outside of Toastmasters speech, and there were about 30 or 40 people in the room, very dressed up, very professional, very everything that I thought one day I'm going to be like that, with those nice suits and shoes and purses and whatever. And there were these two women in front of me who were, everybody sat down for the presentation, and I had 7 minutes, me and each one of our all four of us had 7 minutes to present. And there were these two women, and I looked at them as I was presenting, trying to remember what am I going to say, because it was so highly memorized, because that's what I needed to do at the time. And they both pulled out fancy pens, which to me, again, I was always just a plain old pen person, but they pulled out these fancy pens and they started to write down what I was saying.
And you were impressed, yeah. It's
Yeah. And if I could tell you that
it was your own words that they were writing down with fancy pens.
Absolutely.
That's interesting.
That was the moment where I was like, that important people would write down what I'm saying. Like, even they're writing down what I'm saying. Like, how could that even be possible? But they're also writing it down, fancy pens. And it was just the whole thing. I remember leaving that night going, something's different now. It just awakened something in me, that I knew that it was the start of something different. Of course, again, I didn't know where it was going at the time or how I was going to get there, but I think it didn't matter, because that was the moment that the lightning struck, I guess you could say. And thank goodness for those two ladies. I have no idea who they are or where they went. I don't even know their names, but
they changed your life.
But they changed my life. These two ladies just changed my life by writing down what I was saying. So it's these small things that create such a big impact, sometimes in your life and sometimes in someone else's life, right? Like Kika, who came and spoke on something that has now given Gwen a different direction in one way. So it's amazing. Thank you. And thank you, Sebastian. I mean, it was fun chatting with you over LinkedIn, and I
You're
really
welcome.
appreciate this.
I'm looking forward to finish your book.
Yes, thank you.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
And the last question is from Fernanda. What do you do before a presentation to reduce the nerves? Do you have like a ritual or something like that?
You know what? I think in the past, I may have had this, there was one time I was very nervous for that first big keynote. I tried to do the power posing. I don't know if you've heard of that from the TED. Yeah, the TED speech, Amy Cuddy. It's about your body language. So it was all about taking up more space. You take up more space and go like this, and you'll just feel more powerful. I felt like I did that. So I ran into the washroom. I stood up straight, and I felt super silly. I will tell you, I felt super silly doing that. However, it took me away for that one moment. It took me away from the nerves and that, rolling like, oh my God, am I going to remember what I'm going to say? Am I going to... It took me away from that, which is, I think, what I needed. That was the purpose. So now I just, my ritual is really just making sure I am super prepared. I start way early, like a week early, in terms of just getting everything I need together. But sometimes if it requires me practicing the presentation, sometimes I will do that. I will record myself. I will watch it back. Not every single presentation, because I don't have time for it, but some of the larger ones, larger audiences, bigger clients, I will go through that whole process just to make sure that I feel the most prepared. And when I say it out loud and I do the practice, I think the practicing is so important, because sometimes I will practice and say it out loud, and then I'll go, wait, no, that's not right. Or I'll practice and say it out loud and go, no, I think I have a better story. So I find I need to say it and hear it. And sometimes I only catch it in the recording, but I can, you can be your own coach in a sense, but you have to be able to say it out loud. You also have to time yourself to know how long you're taking. So I really try to leave nothing to chance, even to the point where at my last speaking engagement, I brought 3 pairs of shoes, because there's the pair of shoes that you stand in front of the audience that looks super pretty, but that kills your feet. And then there's the shoes that you sort of walk into the client and you do your setup. And then there's when you're leaving and you can barely walk anymore. There's those flat, beautiful shoes when you get back, into your car. So, but it's all about preparing. I mean, I do a lot more preparing than the shoe preparing, but it's a lot of preparation to make sure that everything is working the way it should, back up, information. I back up my, I send my presentation to Dropbox just in case I can't get on my computer, like everything that I need so that if something goes wrong, I can just move to plan B. So that really helps keep my nerves down as well.
And thank you very much for this opportunity to hear from you about your book and the diamond formula. And thank you everyone for joining us today and for asking so many wonderful questions to Suzannah. The recording will be available next week. We will be back in 2 weeks with another great speaker. And stay tuned and wait for our email from the Harvard Business School Online Global Community. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all so much.
Bye. You too.
Bye.